Today's guest is the man in the background. He makes world records happen.
Yeah, and they include the most marathon distances completed in 1 month on sand with Spencer Matthews.
Josh Patterson's a marathon in a UK city every day for 76 days, where he lived in a motorhome.
And Imo Boddy becoming the fastest woman to climb and run between the UK's 3 peaks.
This is TRC Meets, where we meet incredible runners with amazing stories, this time with Chris Taylor. So Taylor, was there one moment at any point in a challenge where you just thought, things are going wrong, I have picked the wrong job here?
I mean, there's like, what do you want? Like, there's funny ones where I kind of like despair and you think, this is, why am I like, the first thing that came to mind is a bit like, I'm kicking it off with toilet humour, but the amount of times I've stood on the side of an A road with a runner with their hands on the back of my ankles, taking a dump on the side of the A30. Oh, God. Because that's like, they need to do their business and we're on the clock. There's times where I've kind of stood there and been like, how is this my job? Like rush hour traffic, cars going past, just being the literal support in the very definition of the word for someone taking a dump on the side of the road. That happens a lot in my business.
And when that thought crosses your mind of like, how did I end up here? What's then the next thought? Do you go like, no, I love this. This is exactly where I wanted to be.
I mean, you definitely feel needed in that moment. It makes you feel like I'm offering value. I mean, it is a bizarre job. I guess it's kind of, I do just remember the privilege of thinking, this is amazing that it's mad. This is how much I hate being in an office. I'd still choose that roadside toilet stop over.
What's been the most difficult of all those challenges that we mentioned, or even the ones that we didn't mention? What have been the times where you thought, actually, this is really tough? I don't know if this person is going to make it.
Yeah, it's a good question. They all have like every single one of them, bar none, have had a moment where I've thought, oh God, this might not happen, genuinely. And that surprised even me, because a lot of them I've gone in thinking, yeah, this is gonna be tough, but I think they can do it. So do you want like specific examples?
Yeah. Let's have a specific example.
Like logistically, there was a moment, I don't know if you saw this on Spencer's challenge, he was the guy who did the desert run. There was a moment where our GPS was being scrambled by the Israeli Defense Force because of the conflict situation in Gaza. And that was a proper logistical moment of, I haven't got a clue if whatever we do next the record will be null and void, because we can't in any sensible way verify that we've run the distance we're supposed to have run today. And it was a good half an hour. I was like, I'm completely baffled here. So that was.
And I'm guessing as well, in that situation, you're out in the desert. It's not like, I'll just ring them up. Just ask them a question. So how do you start to problem solve that situation?
In that sense, it was proper, like, break it down. I knew for sure we had a straight line section of sand between, there was
Doesn't sand move?
Over periods of months.
Okay.
Don't catch me out like that. Christ. We were on this bit of sand, and I knew there was a building. It was just a hut at the end of it, and I could see on the satellite image where the hut was, and I could draw a straight line from that hut to, and this will sound silly, but a prominent tree. But you could see the tree on the satellite, and we measured it to be exactly like 2.1 kilometers or something like that. So I was like, if we can prove after the fact that this is 2.1 kilometers, if I can video him turning around at every point with timestamp data, I think they'll accept what we've done. But I didn't have a clue. And this was day 27 of 30. So I was like, we've done 26 now. We might fall at day 27, and it's on me.
It was
to
squeaky
solve
bum
this.
time.
And I've never, you prepare for, as much as you can.
But moments like that, I suppose that is a logistical moment where you think, actually, I don't know if we can complete it because the technology is failing, or something around, the makeup of what we're doing is failing. But the people or you, has there ever been a point where you kind of feared for someone's health?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's two. So on one thing you might have mentioned, a guy called Leon did John O'Groats to Land's End. I did that with him last year. And he was going for 14 days, which is not like elite. Record's just under 10 days, but still like extremely good, probably top 20 ever. And day 5, He's about 100 kilometers a day, to break it down. Day 5, which is early on, he started having real problems and got to the point where he could only really walk. And in my mind, I thought, there's a chance if we can't fall too far behind the record because then we're out. But he needs to recover, but needs to still move while he's recovering. So we came up with this plan that if we walk for the first day, if we walk for 23 hours and sleep for 1 hour, say that again, walk for 23, sleep for 1.
Goodness.
The next day, walk for 22 and sleep for 2. The next day, walk for 21 and sleep for 3. And on the 4th day, test running and see if over 3 days of walking, he'll have recovered enough that he can then start running again, but we're not so far behind the distance that if he can run again, he can keep going. And I didn't know if this would work. I hadn't any idea. And on the 3rd day of the walking, I remember the only 2 people there was me and his physio, but it was also Leon, the runner, is one of his close friends. He sat me down when Leon was having a nap and said, I think this has crossed the line. Like, as a friend, I'm really concerned for his, like, he'd get into the van and just be like, you know, when he wasn't even at home, you know, the lights are on, but no one's there. And he wasn't enjoying it. There was it was just no fun at all to be had from that situation. And I remember him saying, yeah, like, I basically, I want to pull the pin. I'm not comfortable with this anymore. And again, me thinking, yeah, I feel exactly the same, mate. Like, I haven't really got a clue, but it's kind of it's his call.
Yeah.
So yeah, at that time I was thinking, like, am I risking someone's health and safety for, you know, it could be long-term injury. You could get a stress fracture that means you may never run or run at a meaningful way again. And in those moments, it's kind of up to you to just decide that you should continue. And yeah.
And how are those
in that situation? Thank God, but it was luck more than anything.
How are those conversations? Because it must be so hard, right? Like, your job is kind of twofold. On the one side, you've got the very practical, like, logistics, get from A to B, sort out all of the problems. It's very kind of pragmatic. On the other side, you're dealing with people that are taking on something that they've never done before. It's a huge physical and emotional strain. Do you find one easier than the other? And if you do have to have those really kind of hard emotional conversations, how do you balance the kind of fun versus, I guess, like, grueling challenge element?
Like, one thing and I only started doing this recently, Leon's was the first we did this with, is to have a discussion when, like, before the challenge, when no one's tired, when you're all, like, in a safe space.
Still friends.
Yeah. Friends, you know, there's no skin in the game at that point. And you can sit down and say, right, these are our rules for stopping. And if, you know, and the runner decides, they tell me, right now, when you're not tired and you know what the challenge is, what are the 2 or 3 reasons, or as many as you want, that you can stop? And then when I have this list, when it gets tough for them, I can hold up and say, you want to stop right now? Is it one of these 3 reasons? And if it is, we stop, that's fine. But if it's not, which is normally not, okay, fine. So you make contracts when you're non-emotional and not tired, so that when it comes to that moment, you can say, remember what we agreed? And normally
you must have fallen out with people over this.
Oh yeah, they hate me for 5 or 10 minutes. Imo's challenge, so the woman who did the 3 Peaks one, there was a moment where on the last night, so it was a 7-day challenge, on the last night we decided to just go through the night and not sleep, because it would have been about, I think she finished 11 a.m. the 7th day. So we thought, well, if you're going to finish somewhat in the morning, let's not sleep. So we went through, and it's probably maybe 2 in the morning. It was a full, like, she, like, collapsed, was on the floor, very emotional, and basically was, not to dress it up too much, was crying and asking, begging, can we get the support van out here? Like, I think I'm done. And we were actually in a situation, we were on this Welsh country lane where we couldn't have got the RV because it's a huge van down this lane. But also, it was a moment for me where I had to confront, like, there was a bit of ego in me. I'm thinking, we've come this far. Like, don't like, you know, you've got another, like, don't get this far to only come this far. Like, you're going to break the record for sure, but why not break it for an extra 2 hours? And she could feel that energy from me. And I feel like, in answer to your question, yeah, we fell out in that moment because she thought that I had an idea of what we should be doing, and she just wanted to break the record. But obviously in that moment I was thinking, yeah, but you're tired in this moment. Now you might think that, but tomorrow when you finish, you'll probably think,
yeah,
should I have pushed a bit more? So yeah, we fell out big time. She was crying, shouting at me. It's tough to deal with at 3 a.m.
And then what happens in the moment afterwards? Do you then have those recollections, like, in the days after the challenge, where it's like, thanks for making me do that. I did hate you in that moment, but, but actually that was a good call.
In the immediate aftermath, there was 3 others with us at the time. It was silence for about an hour and a half because we had to get to the van, so we just walked down this lane in silence, and that was hard to deal with. But yeah, it's since that moment, no one's had a go at me like a week later and been like, by the way, just to mention, I'm still angry at you. Most people have been like, yeah, thanks.
Taylor, you've never spoken about this before, but you are happy to admit that at some times on these challenges, being 5 degrees behind the camera, you've maybe felt a touch of jealousy? Would it be fair to say that some people are doing these challenges and are struggling, but you feel like you could do them, but you at the same time understand that they're doing it for a good cause?
Doesn't that make me sound awful?
No, I think that's
it sounds
totally
normal.
fair. But
Yeah.
is it hard being, you did so recently you paced one of our presenters, Jess,
Yes.
to her first sub 3 hour marathon, and you did a very eloquent Instagram story, which was 100% success rate pacing people this year, 0% success rate with your own challenges. Can you unpack that a little bit? Like, do you find it easier when you are that one step back because it's not all on you?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, I'm not justifying away what I said. It still stands and it's valid. The one race I DNF'd this year was the Spine, and I haven't done any of the races.
Which
so
is
the stats a bit out.
Which is a ridiculously hard, the Spine is
263 miles on the Pennine Way. But yeah, anyway, like I failed that one, and then just because of work, haven't actually had the time to do my own sort of race. It's a bit tongue in cheek, but it is still right. I've 100% DNF for Taylor and 100% success. But yeah, I remember having this. I used to be in the military, and one of the hardest things is when you do yomping, and so it's just basically walking with a really heavy backpack, but it's really, really, really difficult. And if someone's struggling, you are encouraged to work as a team. And I remember having this one moment on a particularly difficult yomp where I was at the back. I won't name the guy, but I was helping a friend, and he was really struggling. And I remember getting to the end. There was 2 of us helping. And I remember turning to my friend and being like, "That's the easiest I've ever felt on a yomp. I used to dread them." And he was like, "Yeah, I was thinking the same. It's really weird." And it was our hardest one yet. And we had this, like at the same time, we had this reckoning of like when you're supporting someone else, you just forget about how
Painful it is for you.
Yeah, like and pacing Jess is the same. Like I'm not like an elite runner. Running 2:59 is still really hard, but I didn't feel in any way the same as I would on the weekend pacing Jess. If I was doing the race myself, like I got cramp at the end and I kept running. Like if it was my race, I'd have stopped. It was a good lesson. You can run through cramp, by the way, if you keep going.
You just keep going.
But I remember thinking, this is like, as soon as you're doing it for someone else, I don't know, it becomes easier.
But is that feeling of missing out on the big world records, is that because you feel like, you've done the logistics, you've done it all, and you've encouraged them to get there, and then you've just got that natural feeling that me and Sarah think that it's completely natural, that you're seeing someone else kind of taking the limelight?
Yeah, it's happened a few times. I guess it does depend on the character taking the limelight, but sometimes I have thought, I guess it's normal to.
I think
everyone
normal.
craves a bit of attention.
What do you think,
again,
Sarah?
Well, I want to ask a question. Do you ever want to take on a world record? How has helping people inspired you to be like, yeah, I want to do one of those one day?
Well, yeah, I guess by definition of saying I'm sometimes jealous of them, I guess that means, I probably do. I probably would. Yeah.
What would you take on if you were going to do one?
I would do 31 marathons in the sand consecutively. I haven't got a clue. I genuinely haven't got a clue. Something that would push me really hard for sure. But it's funny when I don't always, like when you're pacing someone, you have to by default be able to do it yourself, right? So like I know I can run a sub-3 marathon, and therefore you wouldn't have asked me to do it if you didn't think I could. Some of the challenges I do, some of them I'm pretty confident. You can never say for sure. Some of them I'm like, I'm not really too sure.
Running home for Christmas?
Not that last 5K, not the way you did it.
Yeah,
mate.
stop.
No
That was
way.
tough. West Kirby Beach.
Sometimes you just think, what if I could? That's nice. Being on Sky News, that'd be cool.
And then how do you train for that? Because like for loads of these challenges, you see the person running and then you are right there next to them for a lot of it, like a vast majority of all of these races. So how do you balance your training and kind of staying able to keep up with all of these people?
Yeah, you don't do races for yourself, essentially. That's how I've had to balance it this year. My Spine DNF, by the way, I believe was because last year I tried to do kind of the wrong way. So I was doing everyone's challenges, then also training alongside that and trying to compete myself. And I learned the hard way that you get burnt out pretty quickly. So I've tried to do things a bit differently this year. But that's also the other thing that sometimes I feel like it feeds into the jealousy a bit, because I'm like, I gave up all these race opportunities to be here. But I love my job. I'm making it sound like I find it, difficult all the time. It's like a 1% thought in the back of my mind. But it does occur some of the time, and I think,
You're 70% running coach and 30% organizer of the impossible, is how Sarah and I have kind of like described you. Is it ever lonely doing that 30%?
I mean, I'm a control freak, so I don't work with anyone else. So yeah, like the organisation side can feel, it's a lot of pressure. And I felt for the first time not for the first time, but the first time in a really big way, the most recent big challenge, which was Spencer Matthews' Desert One, it did have a lot of media attention. And I had a crew with us. We had a physio, we had a doctor, and we had a videographer. But that's still a pretty small crew. We had a crew at home as well, obviously supporting us. But ultimately, like, I was kind of the de facto leader of that group. And I guess in that situation with the GPS is a good example at times where I felt ethically compromised at times because I wasn't sure that the message being promoted was the same as the message that I felt was actually about the challenge. And the whole time you're like, I remember thinking, if I leave this now, it's all over. All the charity money won't get raised. And so sometimes I feel the pressure of, just not being able to walk away if I want to for a start. And also ultimately, it can feel lonely when you're I don't know, it sounds a bit too like I'm blowing my own trumpet to be like the one who it falls down without, but sometimes it does feel that way.
No, but it must be like in those situations where you're in charge of like safety, logistics, like all of the big planning, it must be quite a like, oh, okay, right. When something does go wrong and it's like all eyes on you, do you think you work well under pressure?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I wouldn't be able to do the job without that for sure, but it's exhausting afterwards.
Yeah. And what does the like recovery look like as well? Like, do you try and balance out your year around all of these challenges? Yeah,
definitely. Again, learned that the hard way a couple of times last year. So now I'm much more measured in just taking gaps in between challenges. And just it's not the physical side of it. People often say, well, you did most of the running too, you must be knackered. I don't normally need much physical recovery, but mentally, like, it can be quite
it's being on all the time as well. I think that's quite hard. Like, we've done a few small challenges, running home for Christmas, which you were involved in as well, where that was a day or a couple of days. 3 days. Can't even remember. But it's that thing of like, you are like on, like, even if you're going to sleep, it's like you've planned in that window of recovery and then you're waking up and then it's going again. Yeah. So that it's like quite a different job when it's like, right, eyes open, full planning mode is setting back in. Yeah, there's no commute to kind of get yourself in the zone of, right, here we go, another Monday morning. But the sleep dep is a good thing, like a good example on that. I don't think anyone slept for more than 4 hours in any night. And that, I can't call that brutal in the same show that we're talking about someone running across a desert for 30 days. Though. I think we can. Yeah, the Wirral's quite remote. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah. I'd rather go to the desert than the Wirral. Really, really harsh. Really harsh, but we'll keep it in. What do you think of the ethics of running world records nowadays that we see more and more of them, and the impossible seems to get a little bit more difficult, but it's taken on by people who are often in positions where they have the wealth and time to do it? Yeah, it's something that I'm having to deal with on a personal basis more than I ever have. Certainly in the last 12 months, it seems to have exploded. And I don't know, for whatever reason, I feel there's a clash of beliefs going on here, because ultimately this is my job, and I want to support people who want to do challenging things that they think that they can't do. And I think that's wonderful, and it's really inspiring to a lot of people. But then there's also this side of, like, sometimes it's completely unrelatable, and I will use Spencer's challenge as a good example, because it costs a lot of money to do these things, like a huge amount of money. The fact that no one's done it before is likely as much due to the financial cost of running it and the time. Who can take 30 days out? Well, plus minus a couple of days as well to travel, plus a few days. Very few people can do that, and so you're kind of, it's a world first or a world record, but to a very small group of applicants, like, who can, not many people can do this. So it's hard to, that's what I mean, like, the messaging around it sometimes gets a little bit lost, I think. And then sometimes now there's people making really outlandish claims, which are,
the thing with these challenges that I find confronting sometimes is you get a lot of the recognition in advance of having done anything. And I find that sometimes can be quite challenging, as in if you make a big claim and if people don't necessarily know quite how outlandish that claim is, I see people receiving literal money, lots of sponsorship money coming in.
So it's in the title.
Yeah, it can be. And it hasn't affected ultra running too much, but I know in the climbing world, there's a kind of a big kickback to, I think the example someone used is like, there's a record now of someone having climbed the 8 highest peaks with supplemental oxygen under the age of 30. And then I don't think this was included, but a tongue-in-cheek addition was with ginger hair. You know, and it gets the point across of like these paragraph long record titles, which it's almost like who can come up with the best title? No, you know, again, how small, the smaller you can make the field of people that can do it, the more likely you are to get your record for it to live on. And I find that difficult because it is my job and I like doing it. And yeah, I guess I haven't really made peace with which side of it I'm on yet, but yeah.
Do you think it ties into, because you're also a running coach as well, there's loads of challenges, because we talked about this on a recent podcast as well. There's Ned's challenge, which I know you've talked about as well. It's a hard thing because same with, if someone, loads of people have joked about the fact that after the Olympics, I can't remember what the stat was now, but 40% of people thought that if they started training, they could be in the Olympics. There's obviously a scale from that, which is broadly ridiculous. If you've never run, the chances of making the 2028 Olympics are slim, to kind of what we're seeing with these world records as well. Do you think, because you're a coach, like, how do you manage if an athlete comes to you and they're like, right, okay, I want to do this, and it is a really far out claim? Do you find that hard? How do you have that conversation of, look, this, I love the ambition, really inspirational, but I'm not sure it's going to happen?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's exactly how I would handle it. You have to, it's a difficult thing because you never want to place ceilings on people, all right? If I won't use that, but if someone came to me and said, look, I want to break the marathon world record or something, if it's ridiculous, I think you can sit down and say, look, again, I love your ambition, that's wonderful, but you got to look at evidence. So let's look at where you are. And obviously, if I don't know, I don't coach you, Rick. If you came to me and asked me about your feasibility of a certain challenge or challenge I don't coach either of you, so I wouldn't have a clue. But the people I have months of data, I can sit down and you have to do it in a reasonable way and say, look, let's look at what we do know and say what really is a respectable or realistic goal. The people that this is why I often wonder, who are the people? It's not the individuals, it's the people in the background. So I'm going, well, who's advising you? Like, how have you not had time to have the space and the, you know, to have an honest and open discussion without judgment or, you know, without feeling insecure, to say, look, maybe that's a long-term goal. Maybe in 10 years we go for that. That's brilliant that you've driven, but let's just go, because also then you got to look at the message you're sending. Like, to use the elite sport example, like especially in running, like elite runners don't have a huge following. I know I could probably name 5 or 6 Runfluencers, and not using that term disrespectfully, but that have more followings than bigger following than combined than all of the elite runners that I can name on one hand.
So interesting.
Your audience is so much broader. So your responsibility is so much bigger. So if as the person with the bigger audience, you're as outlandish as the person sat at home on the sofa saying, yeah, I reckon shot put, I reckon 5 years. I'll hit the Olympics. Like, if you're that person, but you have a huge stadium and a huge presence, and you're telling others and promoting that message,
I so understand that.
I found that
it's a bit like, I mean, if you think of running or those challenges a hobby, and that people go, right, I want to be here. People need to think of it. Some of the best career advice I actually have ever got is like, right, Rick, you want to be there, right, Sarah, you want to be there in 5-10 years time, whatever. But don't think of that aim. Think of the stepping stones and aim for each step, because otherwise it'll just seem too distant. So people often must come to you and they forget about the steps to get there. They just think of the big long-term goal.
Yeah.
How important do you think failure is in the like big kind of public challenges? Because I if you take a kind of average runner in their year of running, they might have an A goal, a B goal, a C goal. It's actually far more likely that they might not hit that A goal than they would. But then when it is something like a world first or a world record, most of the time you do see people accomplish that. So do you think because the stakes are so much higher, the kind of importance of completing it is more, so the kind of the percentage of doubt is less?
Yeah, I would. It's a really good question. Like I'm trying to think of ones that I can't really name any that have failed in recent. I'm trying to think of the bigger ones on social media that I've seen, other than, again, like bringing the guy up twice, but I think Ned is probably going to fall behind his thing. And I've had conversations where people do think, well, so in some ways that's brilliant because it shows how tough the record is, right? And I do get that argument, and in many ways it will normalize failure, which is a good thing, because I get your point you're making, that we're normalizing everyone always succeeding.
Yeah, failure's exciting if everyone's always succeeding.
Yeah, for sure. I see that argument, definitely. I still think you shouldn't aim from the very beginning to fail.
Yeah, I guess it's the kind of like, if there is a high chance of failure, you have to set up that high chance of failure, which is obviously hard as an athlete. Like if you're going in for a marathon and you're like, right, this is the time I want to get, quite often people's kind of psychology is there's no element of doubt. But then I guess if it is a big challenge on a big platform on a world stage and you do fail, then dealing with that failure is even harder. And is that a conversation as well you have with people before they take on the challenges of like, if this doesn't go well, how are you going to cope with that?
You're going to be all right,
Because you can't just pick yourself up the next week and be like, right, 30 desert marathons, we go again.
Yeah, imagine. I wouldn't have gone back. I've never actually sat down and had like I guess it's more someone with a background in sports psychology, which I don't have, but I can definitely have firsthand experience the pressure that someone feels. And I've never been in that position, and I can't understand or appreciate how it must feel to have 100, 200, 300, 400, 500,000. That's 500,000 people. I think that's a huge number, looking at what you're doing and expecting in some way for you to succeed, and then having the pressure of them donating their own money. And again, I don't think it matters per se for me. The money goes to charity, and most people would do that anyway. But I know that people feel like, well, I owe this now to the people who've donated. And yeah, it's hard to witness that. And I don't envy it, and I can't. It's difficult to understand how difficult that must feel.
Taylor, just as one of our final questions, I've never seen you in a pair of trousers.
I thought you would open with this. I really thought, I knew this was coming. Yeah.
But what type of life situation would you wear one for? I mean, you're expecting a son or daughter soon. Would you wear that for the birth of your first child?
Definitely not. No, definitely not. No, I need to be nimble and ready for whatever comes. I don't know. I haven't said this to her yet, but me and my partner, we aren't married, and it's crossed my mind of whether there could be some sort of like tongue-in-cheek element where I turn up at the beginning.
You can't get married in shorts.
Just at the beginning. For the pictures and the rest of it, full suit, but it would be pretty funny. Just everything up here normal, and then the tailor shorts, like tiny ones at the altar.
Thing is,
hey babe,
I completely believe that might happen.
Oh yeah. Me too.
When was the last wedding you went to?
No, I did go in 3 weeks ago, and I wore a suit. I wear suits to.
Must feel so weird on your legs.
It does. I wear these underneath just to make me feel comfortable.
Some sense of normality. Final question then. What's next? What can we expect from you next year?
Well, I'm having a baby in about 3 weeks. That's really next. I've got a few challenges which are 90% likely to happen. They're never my things to share, and I can't give you specifics. But yeah, a couple of big ones, a couple of, not necessarily celebs or, people doing it for personal challenge, which is great.
Amazing.
This should be another jam-packed year. I'm looking forward to it.
And is 2025 going to be a return to racing for you as well?
It is. Jess has inspired me, and I'm going to get into marathon running, which I've never done properly before. I'm going to give it a full year. I think the main reason, and I've not been a parent, so I don't know quite how difficult it is yet. I'm sure I can still run and train, but the longest run you need to do is like 2.5 hours for a marathon, so I can get away with it. I'm assuming it's...
Good luck.
Is it? Okay. 2 hours is too much.
Pushing it.
All right, okay.
Trying to fit in the long run, quite hard.
Well, we'll see. So marathon.
Do you reckon 5K training will be fun?
That'd be fun.
Yeah. No park run record. We'll go for that.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks
for having me.